The monitors had already started making that sound. That slow, hollow pulse that meant hope was running out. Princess Serelith lay motionless on the suspended biobed, her once radiant skin dimmed to a fragile gray. Fractures of light flickered weakly beneath her translucent surface, crystalline veins shattered from within. 3 hours earlier, she had been standing before the Galactic Assembly. Now, the Empire's only heir was dying. And the most advanced medical technology in the known galaxy was failing. Quantum regeneration fields hummed around her body, projecting lattices of stabilizing energy. Swarms of surgical nanites flowed through her bloodstream like glittering constellations. Neural repair conduits pulsed at the base of her skull. None of it worked. Every attempt to rebuild her cellular structure caused cascading rejection. Her species, the Orlith, evolved on a high-radiation world. Their biology was exquisite, complex, and terrifyingly delicate. When it broke, it did not forgive. "She has minutes," the chief biotheorist whispered, his voice cracking despite decades of discipline. The High Chancellor stood rigid near the chamber wall, mandibles clenched. Royal guards lined the curved metallic perimeter, their armor reflecting the dim emergency lighting. No one spoke the word. But everyone understood it. Dead. Outside the viewport, the royal flagship drifted above the capital world, its massive crescent hull casting a shadow across the atmosphere below. Billions waited for news. Inside the chamber, silence thickened. And in the far corner of the room, unnoticed at first, stood a human. Marcus Hale wasn't supposed to be here. He was a structural engineer assigned to help retrofit human-compatible docking systems into Orlith vessels. He had no medical clearance. No royal rank. No authority. He was only present because the emergency evacuation had been chaotic. And because no one had remembered to tell him to leave. Marcus stared at the princess. He had only seen her once before, radiant, poised, speaking with quiet authority despite her youth. Now she looked impossibly small, suspended in light and machinery. The monitor tone slowed. Her chest barely moved. One of the healers stepped back. "We cannot stabilize the vascular lattice," she said softly. "Her core frequency is collapsing." Another spike. Then a drop. Marcus felt something twist in his chest. He didn't understand their biology. He didn't understand their machines. But he understood that look, the one doctors had when they were out of options. He had seen it once before on Earth. When his younger sister's heart had failed. His hands curled slowly into fists. "Step back," a guard murmured to him, noticing his movement. Marcus didn't hear him. On the central display, Serelith's internal structures flickered erratically. Microfractures spread like cracks across glass. "She's destabilizing," someone shouted. The regeneration field surged to maximum. Her body convulsed once. Then went still. The monitor tone flattened slightly, not fully flatline. But close. Too close. The chief biotheorist lowered his head. "It is over." That was the moment Marcus moved. Before anyone processed it. Before protocol could react. He stepped forward, past the edge of the regeneration field, past the stunned healer who reached too late to stop him. "Human," the guard barked. Marcus placed his bare hand directly over the largest fracture in her chest. Contact. For half a second, nothing happened. Then every monitor in the chamber screamed. Energy readings spiked violently. The regeneration lattice destabilized, flickering erratically. Guards lunged forward. "Remove him." But no one touched him. Because beneath his palm, the cracks stopped spreading. Light pulsed outward from the point of contact. Not from the machines. From her. Serelith's dim veins flared faintly, then brighter. The monitor tone changed. It wasn't steady. It wasn't stable. But it wasn't fading anymore. The chief biotheorist froze. "That's impossible." Marcus didn't speak. He just held his hand there. And for the first time since the collapse began, the princess's breathing deepened. "Get him away from her." The command shattered the stunned silence. 2 royal guards lunged forward, armored limbs locking onto Marcus's shoulders. They tore him back from the biobed. The moment his hand left her chest, every monitor dropped. Hard. Serelith's internal light dimmed as if someone had cut power to a star. The fractured lines across her crystalline veins began spreading again, faster this time. "No," one of the healers cried. "Reinforce the lattice." The quantum regeneration field surged to maximum output. Nanites flooded her bloodstream in a desperate swarm. It did nothing. Her breathing stuttered. The monitor tone slipped toward that hollow, final rhythm again. The chief biotheorist's eyes widened as data streamed across his console. Her cellular collapse has accelerated, he whispered. Why would removal of a contaminant cause? He stopped mid-sentence. Because the answer was staring at him from the data. Put him back, the High Chancellor ordered sharply. The guards hesitated. Now. Marcus was shoved forward again, nearly stumbling into the regeneration field. He caught himself against the biobed, breath ragged, heart pounding from the sudden force. What are you doing? He demanded. Touch her, the biotheorist said, voice tight with urgency. Exactly as before. Marcus looked down at the princess. Her skin was dimming rapidly now, that fragile gray deepening toward lifeless white. Fine cracks of light pulsed erratically across her chest. He didn't hesitate this time. He placed his hand over the wound again. The reaction was immediate. The monitors surged upward. Not wildly this time. Stabilizing. The spreading fractures halted. Then, slowly, began to contract. The chamber fell silent except for the hum of overworked machinery and the rhythmic return of Seralitha's breathing. The biotheorist stepped closer, eyes scanning data so quickly his pupils flickered. That is not possible, he breathed. Marcus swallowed. What's happening? We do not know. The regeneration field began interfering with the readings, its energy distorting whatever interaction was occurring at the point of contact. Deactivate the field, the biotheorist snapped. Gasps filled the chamber. Without it, she will die, a healer protested. She is dying with it. The High Chancellor made the decision. Deactivate. The humming lattice flickered off. The nanits were recalled. For the first time since the emergency began, no Olith technology touched the princess. Only a human hand. The monitors stabilized further. Marcus felt warmth beneath his palm. Not heat from machines. Living warmth. A pulse, faint but strengthening. His own heart began racing in response, as if something inside him were reacting to hers. Across the chamber, one of the physicians projected a magnified scan of the contact point. Gasps echoed. Marcus's skin was glowing faintly. Not visibly to the naked eye, but on the molecular scan, something was happening. His cells were altering. Producing proteins. Adaptive chains. They were restructuring in real time. And where those proteins touched Olith tissue, the damage reversed. She is not rejecting him, the biotheorist whispered. She is synchronizing. That is biologically absurd, another healer muttered. It is happening. Marcus gritted his teeth as a wave of dizziness washed over him. What is it costing me? He asked quietly. No one answered. Because the new data just appeared. His heart rate was dropping. His blood oxygen levels fluctuated. His immune system was in overdrive. You are experiencing systemic strain, the biotheorist said carefully. Your body is adapting to hers. Is it killing me? A pause. Potentially. Marcus let out a shaky breath. He didn't remove his hand. Across the room, the High Chancellor stared at the readings, then at the human. For centuries, he said quietly, we have regarded humanity as biologically crude. No one responded. Because on the central display, Seralitha's fractured vascular lattice was visibly knitting together. Not perfectly, but undeniably. And every time Marcus shifted his hand even slightly, the monitors dipped. Even a centimeter mattered. The biotheorist turned slowly to the Chancellor. If he stops now, she will collapse again. The Chancellor's mandibles tightened. And if he continues? The data scrolled. Predictions formed. And for the first time since the crisis began, fear shifted. Not for the princess. For the human. He may not survive the process. Marcus closed his eyes briefly. Then steadied his breathing. Then let's make it count. And beneath his hand, the princess's heartbeat grew stronger. The room no longer felt like a medical chamber. It felt like the center of a scientific revolution. Zoom the cellular scan, the chief biotheorist ordered. A holographic projection expanded above the biobed, magnifying the microscopic interaction between Marcus's skin and Seralitha's damaged tissue. Gasps rippled across the chamber. Human cells were not merely assisting. They were rewriting themselves. Marcus's epidermal cells were extending protein filaments, temporary, adaptive bridges, into Olith tissue. Those filaments mirrored her genetic markers, matching structural frequencies in real time. That level of adaptive protein expression, one of the healers whispered. It exceeds known human baselines. The biotheorist's voice was low and tight. Because no one has ever studied humans under cross-species survival stress. Marcus barely heard them. His world had narrowed to the warmth beneath his palm. It was spreading now. Up his arm. Across his chest. Not pain exactly. Pressure. Like his bloodstream was running too fast. His vision blurred at the edges. How much longer? He asked through clenched teeth. The biotheorist didn't answer immediately. Because the next data spike stunned him. Seralitha's immune response, previously rejecting all foreign intervention, had stopped attacking. Instead, it was replicating the adaptive markers Marcus's body was producing. She is learning from him, the biotheorist breathed. On the display, all its cells began modifying themselves, strengthening weak lattice points using the temporary scaffolding provided by Marcus's proteins. Human biology wasn't overpowering hers. It was teaching it. Humans evolved on a death world, the biotheorist murmured, half to himself. Extreme pathogens. Violent climate shifts. High radiation exposure. Constant environmental stress. He turned slowly toward the Chancellor. Their immune systems are not specialized. They are generalists. The word carried weight. Among advanced species, specialization was considered superior. Elegant. Efficient. Human biology suddenly looked different. Brutal. Flexible. Dangerously adaptable. Marcus swayed slightly. A guard instinctively stepped forward but stopped when the monitors dipped at the movement. Do not disturb him, the biotheorist snapped. Marcus's heart rate was falling steadily now. His body temperature fluctuated wildly as it attempted to mirror Seralitha's internal chemistry. Sweat rolled down his temple. Talk to me, he muttered. Is she stabilizing? Yes, the biotheorist replied. But the adaptation curve is accelerating. On the projection, something new appeared. The adaptive proteins were no longer temporary. Some were integrating permanently into Seralitha's cellular lattice. The chamber fell silent. That is irreversible, a healer whispered. The Chancellor's gaze sharpened. Meaning? Meaning, the biotheorist said slowly, if she survives, she will not be entirely Orlith. The words hung heavy in the air. Marcus let out a faint, humorless breath. She'll be alive. That may not be politically acceptable, the Chancellor replied quietly. Marcus opened his eyes and met the alien leader's gaze. With respect, he rasped, I don't care. Another spike. This time from Marcus. His blood pressure crashed suddenly. The monitors around him began screaming. He is destabilizing, a healer shouted. His knees buckled. But his hand never left her chest. Support him, the biotheorist ordered. Medical drones moved in, attaching stabilizers to Marcus's neck and arms. Energy readings surged again. For one terrifying second. Both heart rates faltered. Seralitha's and Marcus's. Locked. Mirrored. Then. A synchronized pulse. The projection shifted. Her fractured vascular lattice sealed along its primary axis. Not fully healed. But stable. Stable. The biotheorist exhaled shakily. She has crossed the collapse threshold. A fragile murmur spread through the chamber. Marcus barely heard it. The warmth beneath his palm had changed. It felt stronger. Like her heartbeat was pushing back now instead of fading. But something else appeared on the scans. Their cellular interaction was no longer one-directional. Her body had begun responding. Sending biochemical signals back into his. He is no longer only stabilizing her, the biotheorist whispered. They are synchronizing. The Chancellor stiffened. Define that. The biotheorist hesitated. Then answered plainly. If the process continues, their cellular structures may permanently bond at a molecular level. A healer's voice trembled. That has never occurred between species. Marcus swallowed, forcing his eyes open again. She alive? He asked. Yes, the biotheorist replied. Marcus nodded faintly. Then keep scanning. Outside the viewport, the capital world rotated silently. Inside the chamber, history shifted. For centuries, the Empire had classified humans as physically durable but biologically crude. Now their greatest scientists stared at a truth they had never considered. Humans were not biologically primitive. They were biologically dangerous. Because they could become whatever survival required. And beneath Marcus's trembling hand, the princess's heartbeat grew steady. Stronger. Her neural activity is increasing. The words barely rose above a whisper, but they froze everyone in the chamber. Marcus felt it before he understood it. The warmth beneath his palm shifted. It was no longer fragile. It pulsed back against him, steady, intentional. The holographic scan flared as Serelith's cerebral lattice reignited, branching patterns of light threading through previously dark regions of her mind. She is regaining consciousness, the chief biotheorist confirmed. Marcus let out a shaky breath. But the monitors attached to him were far less encouraging. His pulse had dropped dangerously low. His adaptive protein production was still spiking, but now his body was struggling to compensate. Blood oxygen levels dipped. Muscular tremors began creeping through his arms. He cannot sustain this much longer, a healer warned. Then we end the process, the High Chancellor said immediately. The biotheorist's gaze remained fixed on the data. If we sever contact now, she will survive. A collective breath released through the chamber. But the projection shifted again. Something new formed at the cellular interface. The adaptive filaments Marcus's body had extended were no longer retracting. They were being absorbed. Integrated. Serelith's cells had begun anchoring to them. Permanent anchoring. The biotheorist's voice lowered. If he withdraws now, she lives. But the integration will remain incomplete. The Chancellor narrowed his eyes. Incomplete in what sense? She will stabilize, but her body will continue adapting toward his baseline markers for several cycles. And if he continues? The answer took a second too long. The integration will finish. Silence. Marcus's vision blurred again. What does that mean? He asked weakly. The biotheorist stepped closer to the bed, watching the projection with a mixture of awe and dread. It means, he said carefully, her physiology will permanently incorporate human adaptive traits. The Chancellor's posture stiffened. That would alter the royal genetic line. Yes. A healer swallowed hard. It would make her more resilient. The Chancellor shot him a look. And politically volatile. Marcus barely processed the politics. He was focused on the fact that her breathing was steady now. Not forced. Not mechanical. Real. His hand trembled. Is she in pain? He asked. No, the biotheorist replied. Her neural activity indicates stabilization. Then, her fingers moved. Just slightly. But unmistakably. Gasps erupted around the chamber. Marcus felt it against his wrist. A faint curl of pressure. Her eyes fluttered. The luminous gold of her irises flickered dimly at first, then sharpened into awareness. She inhaled sharply. The first conscious breath. The entire chamber fell silent. Serelith's gaze moved slowly, unfocused at first. Then it found him. The human leaning over her. Pale. Sweating. Barely standing. Their eyes locked. The monitors surged again, but this time not in alarm. In synchronization. Their heart rhythms aligned. Perfectly matched peaks. The biotheorist's hands shook as he zoomed in on the cellular projection. It is completing, he whispered. The adaptive filaments dissolved fully into her lattice. And in return, a faint shimmer spread beneath Marcus's skin. Thin lines of bioluminescent light traced along his veins for a brief, surreal moment before dimming to a subtle glow. The bond sealed. Then Marcus's knees gave out. Guards caught him before he struck the floor. His hand finally left her chest. This time, the monitors did not drop. Serelith's heartbeat continued on its own. Strong. Stable. Alive. The chamber erupted in overlapping voices, relief, disbelief, frantic data confirmations. But the Chancellor did not celebrate. He stared at the projection, at the permanent integration markers now embedded within the princess's genetic structure. She is altered, he said quietly. Yes, the biotheorist replied. Serelith slowly turned her head. Her movements were weak but controlled. She looked down at her chest, where no fracture remained. Then at her hands, flexing experimentally. Finally, she looked at Marcus as medics lowered him onto a nearby stabilization platform. Her voice was fragile but clear. Why? Marcus managed a faint smile despite the oxygen mask pressed to his face. Seemed like you needed help. The room went still again. Not because of what he said. But because the monitors above Serelith displayed something that had never appeared in recorded Olith history. Her immune system had recalibrated. Her cellular stress resistance had tripled. Radiation tolerance rising. Pathogen resistance climbing. Environmental adaptability expanding beyond known species limits. The biotheorist spoke the truth no one else dared. She is stronger. The Chancellor's gaze darkened slightly. Because of him. Yes. Across the chamber, medics worked urgently to stabilize Marcus. His vitals were recovering slowly. But faint bioluminescent lines still traced beneath his skin, subtle, permanent. Serelith watched them carefully. Not as a ruler. Not as royalty. But as someone who understood something fundamental had changed. Not just in her. In the Empire. Because for the first time, their future was no longer purely Orlith. It carried a human heartbeat within it. And nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. The official statement to the Empire was simple. The princess lives. The truth was far more complicated. For 3 planetary cycles, the royal flagship remained in orbit while the High Council debated behind sealed chamber doors. Scientists ran simulations. Geneticists mapped the integration markers embedded within Serelith's cellular structure. Every result confirmed the same conclusion. The process was permanent. The princess of the Orlith Empire now carried stabilized human adaptive coding within her biology. Not contamination. Integration. Her recovery exceeded projections almost immediately. Radiation tolerance increased by 240%. Immune response variability tripled. Cellular repair latency reduced by half. She healed faster, adapted faster, endured more. And the data terrified the traditionalists. This cannot be allowed to define the royal line, one elder declared. Our strength lies in purity. Our strength, Serelith replied calmly, nearly died on that table. The chamber fell silent. She stood at the center of the High Council Hall, no longer fragile, no longer dim. The faint golden glow beneath her crystalline skin had deepened, richer, steadier. And beneath that glow, invisible to the eye but undeniable to every scan, flowed something new. Human resilience. Across the chamber, Marcus Hale stood awkwardly in borrowed formal attire. The bioluminescent traces beneath his own skin had faded to nearly nothing, faint threads along his wrists and neck, permanent reminders of what had happened. He had been offered medals. He had refused them. He had been offered wealth. He declined that too. Now he simply stood quietly, wishing the attention would end. The human's involvement was reckless, another counselor argued. Uncontrolled cross-species bonding sets a dangerous precedent. Serelith's gaze sharpened. What precedent? That our biology can be influenced. She stepped forward. It was influenced by compassion. Murmurs rippled. The chief biotheorist projected the final integrated scan above the chamber. Your Highness, he said carefully, there is no instability. The adaptation has harmonized fully. There are no rejection markers. Then say it clearly, she commanded. He swallowed. The princess is not weakened. A pause. She is enhanced. The word echoed. Across the galaxy, the Orlith Empire had long been viewed as advanced beyond challenge, technologically refined, biologically superior. Now their heir carried something born from a so-called primitive species. The Chancellor rose slowly. If this becomes public knowledge in full detail, rival powers will question the sanctity of our genetic dominance. Serelith met his gaze evenly. Then perhaps it is time they question it. The chamber shifted uneasily. Marcus cleared his throat softly. Your Highness. I really didn't do it for politics. A faint smile touched her expression. I know. She turned back to the council. You believed technology was our ultimate strength. Her voice carried through the chamber, steady and resonant. You forgot that survival is not elegance. A pause. It is adaptation. Silence. Then she continued. For centuries, we dismissed humanity as crude, violent, biologically inelegant. Her golden eyes flicked briefly toward Marcus. And yet, when our most advanced systems failed, it was their so-called inelegance that saved us. No one interrupted. Because the data supported her. The Empire could suppress the story, hide the biological specifics, control the narrative. But they could not erase what had happened. The princess lived because a human body had done something their entire scientific doctrine said was impossible. Finally, the Chancellor inclined his head. What is your decree? Serelith straightened. Full medical cooperation treaty with the United Earth Coalition. Gasps. Joint biological research initiatives. More murmurs. And permanent diplomatic alliance. The weight of it settled. Not gratitude. Alliance. Marcus blinked. That's a big step. She looked at him. You altered the future of my species. He shifted awkwardly. I just didn't want you to die. And that, she said softly, is precisely why this matters. Weeks later. The flagship departed orbit under a new banner, Orlith and human insignias intertwined. Across both civilizations, research centers began exchanging data openly. Hybrid medical teams worked side by side, studying adaptive immunology. Not as dominance, but as shared survival. Marcus returned to his engineering post. He never sought fame. But occasionally, when stress levels spiked, faint threads of golden light shimmered beneath his skin, a reminder that something in him had changed too. Not enough to transform him. Just enough to connect him. On the balcony of the Capitol Palace, Seralith watched the stars. Her body felt different now. Stronger. More responsive to environmental shifts. Less fragile. She placed her hand over her chest. Her heartbeat remained steady. But beneath it, there was something else. A quiet resilience. Borrowed once. Now her own. A council advisor approached cautiously. Do you regret allowing the integration to complete? She looked toward the distant blue star that marked Earth's location. No. A pause. They searched the stars for a cure. Her gaze softened. They never thought to look at the hand holding mine. And in that moment, across two civilizations, humanity was no longer dismissed as biologically crude. They were recognized for what they truly were. Adaptable. Unpredictable. And capable of changing an empire. Simply by refusing to let someone die.